When will everyone read the Hindu?
Hindu's 148 years old, Talented is 4 years old. We're both independent.
Mainstream publisher out there that doesn't play this game is the Hindu.
Credible and truthful journalism is our brand differentiator. Did you apply to a couple of jobs at the Hindu?
I don't know.
We're at the end of the financial year, so we thought why not go back to some campaigns that really made us stop in our tracks. And as a journalist, one of my favorite campaigns of the year was the Hindu campaign called Written by Journalists. And the reason for that, of course, is it showed journalism for what it truly is: hard work, and put the spotlight back on editorial supremacy. Now, joining me are three people who are behind that campaign. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Aparajita Biswas, Head of Marketing at the Hindu Group. We have Binaifer Dulani and PJ Aditiya, the agency partners for the Hindu, both from Talented. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Neeta.
Let's start from the very beginning. I remember, PJ, I had texted you after you won the Hindu account. And I remember you telling me that I'm packing my bags and moving to Chennai for some time because I want to get this right. So tell me, how did that germ of the idea come about?
No, your text was the lucky charm. It was no. So for this, in fact, I think so. The three of us represent a much larger team of like 2 to 3 dozen people from both Hindu and Talented, and I mean, goes without saying that this one fully took a village, and it was a campaign like a year in the making from when we first
Went,
in time we first met to when it kind of came out. So nice. It's a nice picturesque story of actually how it happened. So Written by Journalists was that was the brand platform which Talented went to Hindu with as part of the initial meeting itself, pitch meeting itself. Idea broadly happened, I think, between when Binny and we were in conversation. In fact, I think it was I think at that point I was holidaying somewhere I was in Rome, in front of the Colosseum. I'm not even kidding. Okay, in front of the Colosseum, and like there was this sunset is happening. In the next 45 minutes, they are going to stop like the visitors, whatever. But we're in one nice flow, okay, to like crack this, and I think so. The kind of shift was, and the person who led the planning on this brand, Sai Karthik, was also like very closely involved in this part. I think the shift which kind of brought us to this place was, I think there was a lot of thinking around, okay, what do we tell the reader on why the reader should read the Hindu. And Hindu has on record the highest Glassdoor rating amongst all the major mainstream publications in India. And that is saying so much about them as an employer. What is it like to actually be a journalist at the Hindu? Spoke much higher volumes than anything else. And I think, very immodestly, I think Talented is also very much an employer brand in that sense, right? So I think it spoke to our values as an agency, and about how essentially the one thing that is kind of common between advertising and journalism, not giving our industry too much credit also, but we know what it's like to be a people first organization. We know what it's like if the first item on your cost sheet is people's salaries, essentially, and we know what that business is about. And therefore we kind of felt that putting that front and center and making it about who's actually writing this news felt like the correct place to go. That was married into the times that we live in right now, which is very complicated, and therefore it needed something radically simple to stand out, which is kind of how Written by Journalists was born.
Okay. Binaifer, coming to you, did the Hindu editors make you work just as hard as they do for their stories? Because I remember seeing this full page, the first ad that came out, I think it was called find the story. It had at what 50, 100 stages of what the journalist goes through to find that file that final story. Tell us, how did you actually map all of that? How many hours of work was that?
To be very honest, I think when written by journalists became the platform, we set ourselves to a slightly higher creative standard because there's a sense of this quote that does the rounds, right? The consumer is not stupid, she's your voice. So when you say something like written by journalists, it feels like such an obvious thing to say, yet it is defined. And so the idea was everything that we do, there is no sense of lowest hanging fruit, and massive props to Aparajita for really backing that as we move forward, right? So everything has a fairly nuanced take. It says something big about something. I think the ad started off with what? Find the story. But within that, it makes so many, it packs in so many nuances about the times we live in. I think one of them says, protect the vulnerable, drop the passive voice, who did it? There's another one that says, the editor sees M dashes, editor frowns. There is another that says, missed calls from dad 4, mom 8. There's a part of it that talks about 147 years of trust on the line. Another one just below that says, to retract is not a weakness, to correct is courage, you remember. So the fact that I think the hard job was, and I think within this infographic, I think we had 150. And I think the conversation was, how do we cut it down that actually talks to the emotives, like what speaks to the emotion of what the family members go through with the missed calls, this passive voice, and so much that we've seen around gender discourse and how headlines are written. How does it speak to AI? And actually the fact that this is supposed to be human verified and there is like strength in that. How do we speak to retractions that are going to be part of the business, no matter how much you sort of verify in the times that we live in, and then sort of cut it down to written by journalists. This also happened to be the first piece of the first expression of the campaign itself. And that felt like the right thing to do because there was a sense of, let's talk about who we are before we talk about the state of the industry. Right. And let us reinstate written by journalists. And I think in a lot of the QRTs, etc., there was a sense of written by real journalists, written by true journalists, written by powerful journalists. And I think there was a wonderful editorial note that we got from PG, which was written by journalists is enough. We don't need to adjectivize it with true and real. That word has power. Can we reinstate power? It is supposed to be true by virtue of it being journalists.
Rajita, talking about creatives, I think there was this one hoarding and one picture that really stayed with me, which was very powerful. It said, editors that don't report into CEOs. And the beauty of that was Navneet, the Hindu CEO, actually clicking a picture and posting it on LinkedIn. Tell us the story about that. It was super, super courageous.
Oh, there's an interesting story, and I must say that all three of us, PG, I, and Navneet, we played a role in it. And the interesting story is that, so when we were rolling out the campaign, kicking off the campaign, we refreshed our office branding. And we had this 5 pillars with LED poles near the entrance. And for this campaign particularly, Navneet chose the creative. Okay. And one of the boards actually said that editors who do not report into CEOs. So that was his favorite. And he clicked a picture of it and shared it with PG, who then convinced him to take a picture in front of the pillar along with the editor. Meanwhile, I and my team, we have been convincing both the editor and the CEO, nudging everything to do something similar, at least put out a post or do an interview together. But they said that, let the campaign gain some traction, let it grow organically, and so on and so forth. So suddenly one fine day, Navneet told us that he was planning to take a picture in front of the pillar with the editor and share it with PG, and reaction was instant. we said that the picture belongs to us first, belongs to the marketing first before it goes out. And after, I think, some, friendly persuasion, he agreed to share the picture. And we sprung into action.
Yeah.
So we first put up that post. And in fact, when I shared that on LinkedIn, and I remember, I think so far it has been the most viewed post on my account.
Wow.
So I think all three contributed. It was a mixed contribution from all of us.
No, it's a very powerful picture.
At a time when you say here that news
Yeah.
stories are being written in the boardroom and
Yeah.
not in the newsroom, I think this
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
Too much.
that is a picture for the ages. Like I hope we are not headed into darker and darker times, but this feels like something which you can look back at that picture 50 years from now and be like, yeah, that's that's a moment.
The comment section of that actually had the most number of people saying symbol of independent journalism.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
100%.
correct. In fact, my post read like that, standing tall for editorial independence and journalistic integrity and co-custodian of credible journalism. Yeah. So something like that. So yeah, we got some really nice comment on that post.
Oh, really kudos to I think the Meet for actually posting that.
100%, yeah.
Fantastic.
There is a such a delicate balance in those roles overall, and I think it needs I'm glad that exists.
Yeah.
And also talking about creatives, and again, the films that came up. So there were 3 ad films, if I remember correctly. So when you
Four.
Four,
The
okay.
4th is a surprise.
Achha, there's a
The 4th
They're all
happened,
looking at me. I don't know.
the 4th happened as a last minute surprise to AB and team as well.
okay.
We'll manage that story.
Still wanting more. I mean,
Yeah.
why should you settle for less, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So talking about the 4th, even I'm to see. So please show it to me whenever you can. So the first 3 ads that came to you. So when you saw that, what was your reaction? Because I remember there was one ad where the lady opens the newspaper and she starts barking. And when you saw that, were you like, oh, well done, macha, or too bold, macha?
In fact, I can tell you that I was the first one to react, right? So PG was mentioning that, right? How this campaign was presented during the agency pitch process 2 years ago. They called for a pitch, and the shortlisted agency were asked to create a 360-degree campaign,
Okay.
reaffirming what Hindu stands for, and also to build relevance in today's era. So this was the brief, and the brief was pretty exhaustive, and it spoke about, of course, the brand, the organization, the entire news media ecosystem, and how the news ecosystem is troubled by the way news is curated or disseminated or consumed. Plus, there is a rising, distrust in news. News avoidance is at its high, and so on and so forth. And here, how do you bring out that brand differentiation in such a noisy media landscape? And as part of the pitch, they presented a 360-degree campaign, starting with a manifesto, followed by, I still remember the manifesto, followed by the digital films, and then the outdoor, and even the last mile execution idea. So what struck me was the manifesto, because the narrative was so compelling, and it had a very simple and powerful question that when will everyone read the Hindu? And it further said that, I'm just picking few lines, if I remember them correctly, that when will the left and the right read us? When will the patriot and the cynic read us? When will the backbenchers and the frontbenchers read us? When will the Hindi speaking and the English speaking read us? And when will parents, grandparents, and pet parents read us? And so on and so forth, and many such classification. And the answer it arrived at was beautifully simple. that they will read the Hindu when they know that it is not written by influencers or
Right.
viral creators or
Mhm.
AI, but it is written by trained professionals
Right.
committed to truth, rigor, and ethics. In other words, it is written by journalists. So I think after the manifesto, my instinctive reaction was like a big wow. And PG later told me that in that room, which had the CEO, the editor, the CRO, the finance team, the marketing team, I was the first one to react. And yeah, I mean, that was my reaction to the manifesto. And of course, when we later presented the whole campaign, I think the picture got much clearer. And to me, this campaign was drawn on the Hindu's greatest strength, that is, its journalists and their byline. And in this noisy media landscape, credible and truthful journalism is our brand differentiator. And I think when you go back to the brief, this campaign tells the story.
Yeah, but do you also, like you spoke about the pattern and in the readership and all of that, do you think it has helped get the Gen Z on board reading the newspaper today? Because I remember when I was in college, I studied at ACJ. Hindu was a Bible for us that point in time. I'm not aware if that is the same today. Are people still reading the physical newspaper versus what's available on digital platforms? Do you think that has really got an uptake because of this one campaign?
I think so. First of all, the Hindus' Instagram game is very nice. Like I think so. I subscribe to the physical paper, and I think there's a good balance between how the news is covered, like 2-3 hours after it comes out on Instagram, and then the next morning. So I and the kind of engagement that their digital platforms has is equally very, very good. The thing is, the habit of reading versus the habit of reading a physical paper is I think where the generational differences are always there, right? So I think the how for written by journalists as well, I don't think our aim was to say, okay, cool, we want to get people into the habit of reading the physical Hindu paper, because the line ends with written by journalists, Hindu, print, web, app, everything, right? So it is the brand overall. But I think what is important is there is a certain seriousness with which print is written. So that quality of writing is what you'd see on every other platform, is the promise that you're making. It can't be that, okay, I follow the Hindu on Instagram, but the quality of reportage there is not as good as the paper. That will never be the case. It is still the same,
The
writing
brand,
in
yeah.
that.
One other reason comes from the fact that, and this is all quote from a journalist when we researched written by journalists, that are we on legitimate ground, and all the journalists we spoke with. And there was a sense of, I am pressurized to actually write basis whatever is trending right now. So there is a sense of, unless a journalist, more a factory worker, because I need churn X or Y number of things out.
Yeah.
At the same time, if you're speaking to a younger audience, you're talking about a digital product. And you want a digital product that's behind a paywall. Now, I'm not incentivized to write things that are beyond a paywall, but I'm incentivized to be a factory worker. And therefore, I've lost practice of doing this part of it.
Yeah.
So if there is the only brand, I think this is what she said verbatim. I think the only mainstream publisher out there that doesn't play this game is the Hindu. So there is no one more sort of tuned to having a high quality digital product behind a paywall, which I know is not accessible anywhere else and which I will pay money for.
Also, I mean, this is, so they have this, for instance, this property called Hindu Originals, right, on YouTube. Hopefully all things on in West Asia is going to get better. There's one journalist in the Hindu called Stanley Johnny. He's I have been following ever since the war broke out. I've pretty much only been following Stanley Johnny and figuring what he wants to say. Now,
We really have to do.
yeah, I'm one of the few thousand people who retweet him. Right now, his YouTube game, his Twitter game is excellent. Right now, I'm actually following and I can see the fact that how he and Hindu are now synonymous to me when it comes to the war in West Asia right now. So that idea of saying that, okay, cool, sometimes the digital platform also allows the journalists to employ their tools in much broader ways, etc., makes for better reportage, makes for better editorial. So I think in that sense, it's it's a all mediums.
Talking about the reactions, I think I remember seeing one of your competitors, I mean, now he's ex-competitor. He had shared the Hindu ad, the first part of it when it came out, where you're talking about the journalistic integrity and what we do. Then you launched the other part of it where you were attacking the other newspapers. How did that go around?
Well, it might look like that, but I think the feedback to the campaign in its entirety has been positive. Right? And as I said, that since the campaign was launched in phases, so different element or different communication actually resonated with different set of people. So the print ad resonated with the industry. The films resonated more with the Gen Zs and the readers. But as I said, that the 4 films, they were built on 4 very, very strong provocative questions and a metaphor that tells you that what it feels like when you consume a glossy or unverified content. But the intention was not to disparage a brand or any individual, but to have a conversation on credible journalism.
Yeah, no, I mean, if there's the think the idea, the difference between, as we were writing it, only the person who directed it, his name is Ronak Chugh. Fantastic, one of our long-term collaborators. He helped us define what is the difference between comedy and satire. In the writing process. It's a very simple difference between comedy and satire. In satire, you shouldn't lose focus.
Okay.
That's all. You have one joke, right? You're okay, cool. So person opens the paper, someone's asked to read the paper, they read it, they're barking. If it was comedy, you'd escalate that joke more and more. You put like 10 reactions. There'll be somebody else coming in, there'll be something, someone will peep from the window, some dog from the street will only come and be like, hey, why are you barking like me? That's comedy. Right? But that's not the point of the film. The point of the film is to land something very serious.
Very interesting, yeah.
Right? So Ronak helped us kind of design saying, no, you're doing satire. You're almost doing journalistic satire. Stick to the point, right? Which is why in that film, you see, it's only that one shot. It's only her.
But I was bringing you in. I remember there were 2 phases to the campaign, like we were just discussing. The first one was, of course, the OH and the print ads. So was it a planned attempt to make sure that, you focus first on the traditional medium, which is print, so that, it also comes across as the more important one before you launch the digital films?
Not so much the more important one, but I think it came from a sense of, in fact, the print did a great job of like talking about the media ecosystem itself, right?
Yeah.
That was the set. The print got talked about the most on
digital.
Yeah.
So and that was fully by design as well. Like we knew, like I think one of the early chats we had that was, this is successful if people feel this is compelling enough to share online, which is exactly what happened. I think the last words on a newspaper, I think we had a decision to make. I think the entire infographic goes down to it's live. I think the words we had picked before that, it's in black and white, the Hindu written by journalists. And we changed that to it's live. And the one below that became uploading 40%, 60%, 100%. And I think that was also a way to talk about, sure, what happens, what gets printed in the newspaper because of the years that it's just the oldest medium. As a result of that, then sense of that having stature. But the fact is that stature has also moved to a digital piece of news. So it was also a great employee signal. So you don't have to wait until the end of the day to send your article so that gets printed in the newspaper. chances are it gets better traction online. You have a better chance of going viral online, finding new fan bases online.
Now, we've seen newspaper ads attacking other newspapers, but this is one ad where, where you've attacked the whole gamut from influencers to AI-led features to, digital platforms that use clickbait headlines, paid news, all of it. Did you end up making more enemies in this one ad as opposed to all the previous ads you've done for the Hindu?
No, interestingly, that's what I said. That I think our sense is that if we see the campaign in its entirety, the feedback, we received some really positive feedback. And since it was launched in phases, every element struck a chord with a set of audience, and they were kind enough to share and like and comment. The intention was, of course, not to take a dig or disparage a brand or individual, but it was more about creating a conversation on credibility, on integrity, on truthful journalism, and I think the campaign achieved that very well.
Yeah, I mean, no, she's totally right. Like, journalism is, I mean, in Neeta, you know this better than any of us. Like, it's a process, right? The process of journalism makes it journalism, right? You can't skip 8 parts of the process and still call it journalism, right? So so for instance, like, Binny and I are both failed journalists in that sense. Okay. Both of us, I think, in college, I did an internship at a couple of neighborhood newspapers. I did not go through, and the reason I did not go through is because I was scared. I did not have the guts to be a journalist because it actually requires you to do very gutsy things and take risks which would interfere in other parts of your life. People like me are not supposed to be in this profession. The problem is too many people like me are in this profession. Why did people like me think that they could do this job? We are not. We have other things to do. I'm doing something that I really love. It's not journalism, and I'm not. It's not trying to be journalism, etc. But the fact that you can just use that title in some way and get away with without following that process and without living that life is what honestly is unfair to the idea of just skipping a bunch of it and then just still calling yourself that didn't feel too fair.
Did you apply to a couple of jobs at the Hindu?
Like I said, so there's a neighborhood newspaper called Adiyar Times.
Yes.
Run at that point, it was run by this wonderful gentleman called Vincent D'Souza. I attended a workshop, it was a summer internship of his, and there was a journalist from the Hindu who came to give us a session. And at that point, there was an election that had just taken place in Tamil Nadu, and a new party had come into power. And she was talking about what it was like covering the party that the party was having that night, after having won. And I mean, there was just a lot of debauchery, and we were like, "Oh my God, that sounds really unsafe." And she's like, "No, dude, that's just part of the job." And she's like, "Oh yeah," and then I got some calls and it was really bad, and then they tried. So, and she was talking about some of the riskier aspects of her job as though it is fully part and parcel. And at that point, just hearing her talk about it so normally, I felt like peeing my pants. That's how scared I was. and I'm like, okay, all the best. I will support this profession in the best ways I can. I can't do it. and so I think it's
so after 15 years,
after 15 years,
to support it.
Yeah,
right?
I hope I'm doing right by it in different ways.
Yes.
But I would have been a terrible journalist. But I can be a good champion for the profession.
Thank you from the fraternity. Okay, actually, let me bring my last question to kind of sum up what you have chosen in your life. I know that Talented works with a bunch of clients, but I think Hindu is your first media client.
At Talented, yeah,
Yes.
first mainstream media client. Yes,
And I
yes.
remember your previous media client with your previous company managed to make you the most sought after creative person in India, winning Grand Prix after Grand Prix. Now,
Nice.
when you actually took up this one, was there an expectation from your end, a personal one, to make this better than that? And was it more difficult?
So the client you're referring to is Vice. The
Yeah.
campaign was the Unfiltered History Tour. Binaifer, myself, and a bunch of others from Talented. Now at Talented. Thank you for kind words. Right. So it is. Yeah, I think we generally have a huge sentimental value as people towards like the power of this whole thing, right? So and I think there is a certain underdog energy that we very much relate to. I mean, look at it, like just the fact of they're a 148-year-old brand who's trusted a 4-year-old brand with announcing to the world on reaffirming who they are, etc. Right? The reason I feel that they were also one of the things that worked in our favor is Hindu's 148 years old, Talented is 4 years old. We're both independent. That is, I kind of have a feeling that's one of the things that kind of, because there is a slight kindred spirit in the idea of saying, okay, cool, it's us against the world in some way, and I think we embody that in generally the way that we go about work, and so we're off to a hopefully a good start with the Hindu, and yeah, long may they continue.
Fantastic. Anyone wants to add something to that?
I think I want to talk about the overall impact this campaign had. And of course, both the teams are meeting because we have certain award entries and, we know the numbers and we are doing that. So interestingly, of course, like if you see that, the campaign had massive reach because it was planned as multimedia so that it can gain both reach and resonance. So the overall campaign had around 400 plus million reach, went 50 million reach only through social media. And if you pick up Google Trends pre-campaign and post-campaign, there was this 85% growth in searches like unbiased news and the best newspaper and etc. And what interestingly Talented shared with us is that this campaign seeded a search term. The trusted news India was never there before the campaign. And after we rolled out the campaign and, with the PR amplification, we achieved around some 3000% growth in the search term. So, which means that people are now talking about credibility and authenticity and integrity in journalism. And that's why people are searching, for the trusted source. So I think it was a phenomenal success. And you asked Neeta that whether there's a phase 2. So keep reading Hindu and you will.
We surely hope there is.
You will definitely get some surprises.
No, I
there.
think
One of the biggest markers of success at Talent is actually the number of people who want to build their career with us. So I think written by journalists, the day it was launched, we've always been blessed and feel very grateful for a great talent pipeline. But the number of people who wrote in saying that I would really love to be part of your growth.
full on,
Nice.
full on. No, because there is that's
So the
very true.
ones wanting to be a journalist part of you must have done a little jump. Okay, so to sum it up, I guess I would say, while it was a campaign written by journalists, was a campaign written by very talented agency folks like you. I must say it did sound like an actual journalist has written it. So yeah, kudos to you guys for all the research that you've done, and to your Aparajita and the Hindu for the conviction to stand behind it and actually live every word of it. So thank you so much, and I really hope there's a part 2 of the campaign
Yes.
soon.
Yes.
Thank you, Neeta.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you,
chat.
Neeta.